We use stories, symbolic methods to communicate bigger, deeper, more complex concepts to one another in ways that have bridged gaps between people and have allowed us to come up with solutions to big problems without actually encountering any real danger. I grew up in the American Southwest. I come here and I don't know anything about earthquakes. But if I ask someone, they'll tell me what you have to do, and they'll tell me a story about having gone through one themselves to reduce intimidation. I will bring you a story. I'm from the American Southwest. Who here has ever seen a rattlesnake? Ah, terrifying, right? Scary, poisonous pit vipers that shake and rattle and strike. They're actually not particularly dangerous. In the past 30 years in Death Valley, the most ominously named national park in the United States, only 5 people have been bitten by rattlesnakes. Of those, 3 of them had their hands shoulders deep down a rattlesnake hole. And the other 2 had picked them up and were playing with them and trying to show off. So, practically speaking, your intimidation about rattlesnakes can go down a little bit from that story. Now, the way that we grow, the way that we learn, the way that we teach one another is by sharing stories and creating a common language and a common idea of these world mythologies that allow us to share characters and share situations that we all understand together. And you need to look no further than kids to see how these stories work. You create a world and suddenly any cardboard tube can be a lightsaber. Any story that you tell has the potential to teach someone something that will help them be better, do better, reach further than what they can expect to do on their own. I've worked on a number of these big global story worlds. Cairns in the Caribbean, Halo, Avatar, Tron, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, The Happiness Factory, Spider-Man, the Marvel Cinematic Universe, Disney Descendants, and others. And my job is to develop that story world, work with different teams to produce the different pieces of it that you'll experience, and then work to organize all the business behind that, how to make it sustainable for all the people working on it, because people do better work when they can eat and sleep in a sheltered environment. I know that's a really scandalous thing to say in Hollywood, that people do better when they're fed, make them work. But this is all a really delicate balancing act between the creative life of that story world, the practical realities of making experiences, and all of it is held up by making something that audiences would actually want to engage with. So when you're creating a new experience, whether that's a piece of technology or an idea you need to share or a piece of entertainment content that you want to make, you need to first think about that critical big step. Who is your audience and what is it that you are giving them? First, we tend to make stories for people. As of yet, most of our audiences are not robots. Yeah, maybe? There's a lot of innovators in the audience, I understand. But today we're going to talk about audiences that are made of people. So when we're making stories for people, you want to dig deep into what makes humans tick. And unlike robots that you can predict, that you can treat kind of as objects because you know how they'll react, humans are complicated. You can't treat them like an object, especially in groups. They get really random. So when you're working on studying your audience and figuring out who you're actually reaching out to, you need to treat it as a subject of study. You need to collaborate and learn and observe and exchange information with them, or else you're going to make a bad hypothesis and probably they'll act in ways you didn't expect them to. And there are all sorts of different groups I've worked with that try to give something to the audience in a different way. Osos de Anteojos is a project by a group of Colombians in Bogotá. And for them, the big challenge that they were facing was most of the children's media that was being shown to kids was imported. So they wanted to create a media enterprise that allowed for Colombian kids to learn about Colombian indigenous culture and local ecological realities in a way that would be fun for kids. Other projects I worked on, Datavized is a VR company that I founded and ran for a year before moving on, because I don't like software, that's not my thing. Creates web browser-based virtual reality, WebVR, and works to integrate complex data sets and data visualization into virtual reality experiences. I've worked for several years with UNICEF USA on a project called UNICEF Kid Power. And for them, their big problem is, how do we have kids help other kids around the world the same way that Pennies for UNICEF did in the 20th century? So we created a wearable band, a pedometer where kids run around and get active, then they earn points that unlock ready-to-use therapeutic food to help malnourished children around the world. All of these are things that, by creating the content for them, you're giving someone something in return, a way to connect to your local environment, a way to understand something that would otherwise seem out of reach, and a way to be able to show people how they can help one another at the earliest possible stage. The most important collaborator you will ever have in your business or in your projects is that audience. So what does it mean to engage with them? What is it that you need to do to invite them into a world you want them to be inside with you? So, you know who they are. You know what you want to give them, but how are you going to communicate? This is when we start talking about the experience of what you'll build. And for some people, you know it's going to be a feature film. For some people, it's going to be a game. For some people, it's going to be an interactive room-scale holodeck. We live in pretty interesting times, yeah? So, at the pinnacle of all human achievement, you can create a viral meme like the Harlem Shake. Did everyone Harlem Shake? Okay. New pinnacle of human achievement, tactics. It's moved on because now it's Disney princesses that are actually Grumpy Cat. That's where we need to go next, guys. That's where everything is moving. But okay, that moment is over because now it's animals that are friends with other animals in cute pictures and GIFs, right? Okay. And another 3 or 4 seconds pass, and now we're back to tomographic pop stars, holograms that are performing on stage. We all knew that they would have a return to their moment, but that's where we're back again, right? So the reality is, we have almost any imaginary, we have more options to use to communicate, more experiences we can use to communicate and to give things to the audience we're seeking than we have time to imagine. So what you want to be very careful about is that you are picking the right experience, the one that fits most comfortably with the goal of your audience, with something that your audience will want to engage with that they're already familiar with, in a way that's going to create a really positive human response. Because again, today we're talking about human audiences, not robot audiences. So we can paint pictures in the air. We can create imaginary worlds where we can build them from scratch with other people. We can put people inside a virtual reality holodecks. This is from the 1993 classic mystery show, Murder, She Wrote. Jessica Fletcher is a mystery author. She travels around, and everywhere she goes, someone dies. It's a little sketchy. But she created a virtual reality mystery game in a 1993 episode, and this is still the most appealing hardware that I've seen for virtual reality. But we can also take it on the move. There are different ways to adapt head-mounted displays or headsets to your needs. We have the opportunity to immerse people in a fully present environment wherever you find them. And we have even more exciting things in augmented reality. People have been playing with location-based games and augmented reality for years. And it only took leveraging the single most profitable game franchise ever made to make people think that AR was something they could do. But this is just the beginning. It's the beginning of these augmented reality platforms that are going to allow us to integrate digital and virtual elements with the real world around us without fully interrupting your life, to put on a motorcycle helmet and dive into a new place. And I'm going to take a moment because there was a time, not so very long ago, where this picture looked weird to me. Remember that time? It was a great moment, but it's easy to forget that all of these tactics, all of these great new ideas, ultimately have to stand up to rigor. They have to make sense to you, your audience, and the thing that you're trying to give them and get them to engage with. So remember what you're asking them to do in a whole sense. If to even begin to engage, they need to buy a new piece of hardware, put it over their head, connect it, go through a startup process, log in, connect to the internet, and then also look silly while they're doing it, you may need to give them a very, very compelling reason to do it. So not only do you choose what you want to say, but you get to choose the experiential framework in which you're going to say it. And no matter where your start point, you have the opportunity to connect with people with other complementary skill sets to make the experience you want. And the reality is right now, it's never been more exciting or more possible to connect to people globally that want to do that work with you. And we're talking about immersive worlds. We're talking about AR, VR, mixed reality, and the coming things. But what all of them are at their core is a way to take things that we experience in 3 dimensions as humans and create an experience and an interface that is more similar to the way that we already experience the world. We are talking about a revolution in 3D imaging and in viewing in 360 degrees. So at a start point, we're taking things that are already in 3 dimensions, that are usually viewed back or captured in 2 dimensions, and we're putting them back in 3 dimensions so that you interact with them in a more similar way to the way you engage with the real world. And that's why VR and AR are exciting as technologies. Whether or not we have Oculus Rift style head-mounted displays in 10 years, we're going to have a world where the interfaces you're working with are much more tailored to how humans move about in space. We have a number of different interfaces that you're already familiar with. Keyboard and click-based interfaces with mice, swipe-based interfaces. But very, very soon, you're going to see not only the visual-based interfaces that you're seeing in 360 video and VR headsets now, but gestural interfaces beyond what you see in a Kinect. Things like retail kiosks, things like your computers, will all respond to the motions of your hands without being asked to. This will be the next wave of interfaces that allow us to connect and engage with digital or technology in the world we're playing with. And all of this means that unlike previous forms of media and experience, where you have had the opportunity to direct people's frame of view with a camera, the person's head is now the camera. You can't think about creating a piece in 360 degrees or in an open world like an augmented reality space without putting the human at the center of your design. You don't have control over them anymore. You can only guide, invite, and lure them where you want them to be. And this is actually very, very exciting because it means that you get to cast the role of the audience member inside these environments. You get another layer of creative freedom to think about how you're going to engage and play with the people that you are hoping to reach. And giving them a role and an opportunity to engage means that you're going to have a different sort of interaction with them, a different sort of opportunity to teach and learn, and opens up a whole new range of human interactions that let you create deeper associations with what you're making. So what are you planning to do to your audience? At the end of the day, we've talked about what you're planning to give, what you're going to choose to communicate with, but now what are you actually going to do to them? So we know that their head is the camera. That means you need to figure out how to adjust them and move them in space, how to draw the eye, how to work out things in a way that's more similar to what you see in interior design, theatrical design, than it is to graphic design on a traditional screen. And when we talk about the fundamental properties of VR, there are 2 big things: immersion and presence. When you're inviting someone into a virtual reality world, you are putting them completely inside a 360-degree frame of view where they are at your mercy. So you've invited them into another world. What kind of host are you planning to be to get them there? Are you going to be helping them go through the entire process of getting on the headgear? Are you going to be handing them things and not being in the room? What would you do to set the table in this imaginary world, invite them in, and then act with them? What kind of guide, what kind of host are you going to be, and how much care are you going to take with them in the process? So first, you want to be very, very clear that you're not actually unintentionally causing harm. When we talk about virtual reality especially, we're talking about an environment where we have limited amount of longitudinal testing, where we're asking people to put on heavy hardware, and we're dealing with content frameworks that actually give people physical discomfort responses. And why do they do that? Well, you're hitting people on a deeper level because you're replicating the environment they're accustomed to exploring. So if you hit them right, you have the potential to create a serendipitous memory. Whether or not it's staged for them, there's the feeling that you have discovered that thing the same way as if you were walking down a trail. A moment of aha, that beautiful serendipity that you can feel that creates a deeper association and memory. This is why people are excited about it and call virtual reality the empathy machine. The idea is, by doing this, you create a deeper emotional association with the content you're viewing. But practically, brass tacks, you're dealing with a human sensory design environment. And we all know from kindergarten, or whatever it is called outside of the United States here, that we have 5 senses, right? 5 senses? Everybody agree? Yeah, but let's call them out. Sight, someone, sound, yeah. Smell, touch, yeah, and they're right up there, so awesome, great job guys. When you go into a virtual reality environment, you only potentially have 3. You have your visual senses, your auditory senses, and spatialized sound is super cool. You can do 360-degree and 3-dimensionalized sound in a basic MP3 file with normal headphones. It's super cool. It's a great way to direct people. You can also put people into haptic responsive gloves, into but that's actually really only scratching the surface because kindergarten lied to us, guys. We have a lot more senses than that. We have so many more ways of interpreting the world around us as humans, and again, we're talking about the human audience, that go beyond those simple 5 senses. Some of my favorites, proprioception, which is I can close my eyes and I know where my arms are. Nociception, which governs both pain responses and pattern recognition. So every time you see there, or there misused, or you have the color thing happen, and you're like, it's actually a little tiny pain response in your brain because it's like, that's wrong, it's not okay, and you're gonna hurt because of it. So going back into our head-mounted display, into our virtual reality environment, we only have these 3. So that gives us a narrow band we can play with. Reality they're in, it's going to feel like maybe you ate a bad mushroom. And your body's going to respond the same way. So if you don't carefully test and evaluate and go back and forth on a physical level with a variety of different audience members, then you're going to make people sick. You're going to make them want to puke. And that's not usually the response that you want out of something you're trying to invite people into. So what are people doing? How are they inviting people into new realities now? Well, the first killer app in virtual reality was a game called Virtual Office, right? All of this incredible experiential technology, and the first thing we wanted to do was go into a cubicle, right? Yeah, great job, us. And then we had a robot surgeon cut off your head. And then there were zombies. And then we went to a hedgehog's birthday party, which was great, but they just got unfunded. I highly